The Kraxan warship hung in the darkness of space like a metal beast waiting to strike. Inside its command deck, Commander Vorth stood tall on his four legs, his purple scales shining under the artificial lights. His three eyes looked at the holographic display showing a small blue planet called Earth. "Look at these primitive creatures," Vorth said, his voice filled with disgust. Around him, his officers laughed. The sound was harsh, like breaking glass. They still use chemical projectiles. Bullets. Can you imagine? Lieutenant Zek moved closer to the display. His tentacles waved in amusement. "Our shields can stop their fastest missiles without even warming up. Their weapons are toys compared to our plasma cannons." The bridge crew erupted in more laughter. They had conquered 17 star systems. Each victory came easier than the last. The Kraxan Empire stretched across the galaxy, and no one could stand against their technology. "Show me their military positions again," Vorth commanded. The display zoomed in on Earth's defenses. Military bases appeared as tiny dots. Satellites orbited the planet like insects around a lamp. Fighter jets looked like metal birds frozen in time. "Their strongest weapon is something they call a nuclear bomb," reported the science officer Drac. His voice carried mockery. "It creates a small explosion. Nothing our shields cannot handle." Vorth's middle eye twitched with amusement. "And their soldiers?" They wear fabric uniforms. Some have metal plates for protection. They carry rifles that shoot small metal pieces. Drac pulled up images of human soldiers. They move slowly. They tire easily. They need food and water constantly. The commander's tail swished back and forth. In 300 years of conquest, the Kraxan had never lost a battle. Their exoskeletons could deflect energy weapons. Their four legs let them move faster than any bipedal species. Their three eyes gave them perfect depth perception and nearly complete vision around their bodies. "Prepare the invasion force," Vorth ordered. "We will take this planet in one rotation of their sun, maybe less." Down on Earth, in a hidden bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains, General Sareth Chun watched the alien fleet on her monitors. Beside her stood Colonel Marcus Webb, his face calm despite the situation. "They're not even trying to hide," Webb observed. "Sitting there like they own the place already." Chun nodded slowly. "They've been broadcasting on all frequencies, demanding our surrender, laughing at our weapons." She turned to her tactical team. "What's the status of Operation Longshot?" "All teams are in position, General," reported Major Kim. "Go Squadron is spread across 7 locations. They've been in place for 48 hours. On the screen, red dots appeared on a world map. 7 locations, each one carefully chosen. Mountain peaks, urban buildings, hidden valleys. Places where a patient hunter could wait. "The aliens don't understand," Chin said quietly. "They think warfare is about the biggest gun, the strongest armor. They've never faced an enemy who learned to kill from the shadows." Miles away, on a mountain ridge in Alaska, Sergeant Jake Morrison lay perfectly still in the snow. His white camouflage made him invisible against the landscape. Beside him, his spotter, Corporal Lisa Park, watched through her scope. "Wind speed 5 knots from the northwest," Park whispered. Her breath made small clouds in the freezing air. Temperature -15. Humidity 30%. Morrison didn't move. He had been in position for 2 days. His rifle, a modified Barrett M82, lay ready. The weapon looked simple compared to alien technology. But humans had spent centuries perfecting the art of sending a piece of metal exactly where they wanted it. "You think the brass knows what they're doing?" Park asked quietly. "These aliens have shields." "Shields stop energy," Morrison replied, his voice barely above a breath. "They stop fast-moving objects. But what about slow ones?" In his scope, Morrison could see the Kraxan scout ship hovering over the valley. It moved lazily, scanning the ground with bright beams of light. The aliens felt safe behind their technology. Back on the warship, Vorth received reports from his scouts. No resistance detected. The humans have pulled back their forces. They know they cannot win. "Of course they do," Vorth said. He turned to his weapons officer. "Begin the landing sequence." send the first wave to secure their capital cities. The landing craft began to descend. Huge metal ships carrying thousands of Kraxan soldiers. Each warrior stood 8 feet tall, covered in natural armor that could stop most energy weapons. They carried plasma rifles that could melt through steel in seconds. As the ships descended, they activated their shields. Blue energy fields surrounded each craft. Inside, the Kraxan soldiers checked their weapons and laughed about the easy victory ahead. In New York City, Sniper Team 2 watched from the top of a skyscraper. Sergeant David Chun and Corporal Maria Gonzalez had turned an abandoned office into their nest. Through the windows, they could see the alien ships approaching. Range 3,000 meters and closing, Gonzalez reported. They're coming in slow. Confident. Chun made tiny adjustments to his rifle. The weapon had been modified by human scientists who studied the alien shields. They discovered something interesting. The shields were designed to stop fast-moving threats. Anything moving above a certain speed would trigger the defense. But what if something moves slowly? The special ammunition in Chen's rifle was different. Each bullet had a small thruster that would activate after firing. Instead of speeding up, it would slow down. The bullet would approach at just below the shield's detection threshold. 2,000 meters, Gonzalez continued. Wind is picking up. Just 2 clicks left. In London, Moscow, Tokyo, Sydney, and other cities, more sniper teams waited. Each team had spent years training for impossible shots. They could put a bullet through a coin at 1,000 meters. They could calculate wind, gravity, temperature, and a dozen other factors in their heads. The Kraxan had never faced an enemy like this. Their previous conquests were against civilizations that met them head-on. Energy weapons against energy weapons. Shields against shields. The strongest technology won. But humans had learned different lessons from their history. They remembered Vietnam, where farmers defeated superpowers. They remembered Afghanistan, where mountain fighters exhausted empires. They remembered that sometimes the smallest weapon in the right hands could change everything. On the command ship, Vorth watched his forces descending. "Look at them hiding," he said. "Too afraid to face us. They will learn that hiding only delays the inevitable." An alarm suddenly sounded. "Commander," the sensor officer called out. "I'm detecting something strange. Small objects moving toward our landing craft." Very slowly, Vorth's 3 eyes focused on the display. Tiny dots appeared around his ships, moving so slowly they barely registered on the sensors. "What are those?" "Unknown, Commander. They're too slow to be weapons. Perhaps debris." In Alaska, Morrison breathed out slowly and squeezed the trigger. The rifle kicked against his shoulder. Through his scope, he watched the special bullet fly toward the scout ship. After leaving the barrel, the bullet's thruster activated, slowing it down to just under the shield threshold. The Kraxan pilot never saw it coming. The bullet passed through the shield like it wasn't there. It struck the cockpit window, a special armor-piercing round designed to penetrate, then fragment. The pilot's head exploded in purple blood. The scout ship spun wildly and crashed into the mountain. Around the world, more shots rang out. In New York, Chen's bullet found the engine of a landing craft. The slow-moving round penetrated the shield and hit exactly where the fuel cells connected to the power core. The explosion lit up the sky. In London, another sniper targeted the command antenna of a Kraxan ship. Without communications, the soldiers inside couldn't coordinate with their fleet. The ship landed hard, confused, and isolated. On the command deck, alarm screamed. "We're losing ships," Zek reported, his tentacles writhing in panic. 17 craft down. "No, 23. 29. Ow!" Vorth roared. "What weapon are they using?" "Unknown, Commander. Our sensors show nothing. The ships just die." In the mountains of Switzerland, Sergeant Anna Mueller watched through her scope as a Kraxan officer emerged from a crashed ship. The alien looked around, confused. His 3 eyes couldn't spot the threat. His advanced armor couldn't protect him from what he couldn't see. Mueller's shot took him in the neck. The only spot where the natural armor had a gap. The officer fell, purple blood staining the snow. "Target down," her spotter confirmed. "Next target, bearing 270, 800 meters. The Kraxan soldiers who survived the crashes found themselves in a nightmare. Every time they moved into the open, death came from nowhere. No energy blasts, no explosions, just sudden death from an enemy they couldn't see or detect. Their plasma weapons could level buildings, but what good was that against an enemy who wasn't there? Their armor could stop energy blasts, but these primitive bullets found every weak spot. The joints, the neck, the eyes. In the command ship, Vorth watched his invasion fall apart. Half his landing craft were down. The soldiers on the ground were being picked off one by one. His mighty army was being destroyed by an enemy using weapons his scientists had dismissed as antiques. "Pull back," he finally ordered. All forces returned to orbit, but the retreat became a slaughter. Sniper teams had positioned themselves along the escape routes. Every ship that tried to lift off presented a perfect target. Slow-moving bullets found engines, fuel cells, control systems. The Kraxan had expected to fight an enemy that would face them directly. They prepared for energy shields and plasma cannons. They never prepared for patience. For hunters who could wait days for one perfect shot. For warriors who turned simplicity into lethality. As the alien ships burned across Earth's sky, General Chun watched from her bunker. "Phase 1 complete," she announced. Ghost Squadron reports 73 confirmed kills. Enemy forces in full retreat. Colonel Webb smiled grimly. "They thought our bullets were toys. They never considered that we've had centuries to perfect the toy." In space, Commander Vorth stood on his bridge, watching the disaster unfold. His invasion force was in ruins. His soldiers were dead or dying. And he still didn't understand how it had happened. "Commander," Drax spoke carefully, "the humans, their weapons are primitive, but their tactics are not," Vorth finished. His three eyes showed something new. "Fear. Prepare a full orbital bombardment. We'll burn their cities from space." But even as he gave the order, Vorth wondered. If the humans could do this with simple rifles, what else had they prepared? What other surprises waited in the darkness? On Earth, sniper teams began moving to new positions. Phase 2 was about to begin. The aliens had learned that human weapons weren't toys. Now, they would learn that human patience wasn't weakness. The war for Earth had only just begun. Commander Vorth paced the bridge of his warship, his forelegs clicking against the metal floor. The purple scales on his body had lost their shine. 3 days had passed since the failed invasion, and his three eyes showed the strain of sleepless nights. Outside the viewports, Earth continued its peaceful rotation, as if mocking the mighty Kraxan fleet. "Status report," Vorth demanded, though he already knew the answer would bring no comfort. Lieutenant Zek approached carefully, his tentacles drooping with exhaustion. "Commander, our ground forces are completely eliminated. The few survivors are hiding in crashed ships, too terrified to venture outside. They report death comes from nowhere. Silent. Invisible." The bridge fell quiet except for the hum of the ship's systems. Every officer remembered the confident laughter from just days ago. Now, that same bridge felt like a tomb. "Have we detected their weapons yet?" Vorth asked, though he knew this answer too. "Negative, Commander," the science officer Drac replied. "Our sensors are calibrated for energy weapons, plasma discharge, electromagnetic signatures. These bullets, they're just pieces of metal moving through air. By the time our sensors detect them, they've already struck." Vorth's tail lashed in frustration. "Then recalibrate the sensors." "We have, Commander. But detecting a small metal object against the background of a planet's surface, it would be like finding a single grain of sand on a beach while orbiting above. Our technology wasn't designed for something so primitive." The word hung in the air. Primitive. They had mocked human weapons as primitive. Now those primitive weapons had destroyed the finest invasion force in the Kraxan Empire. Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, in a submarine modified for extreme depth, Admiral Yuki Tanaka studied the tactical display. Red dots showed the positions of Kraxan ships in orbit. Green dots showed her secret weapon. "Ma'am, all Orca teams report ready," her executive officer reported. "Depth charges modified and loaded." Tanaka allowed herself a small smile. The aliens had made a critical error. They assumed human warfare happened only on land and in the air. They never considered the oceans that covered 70% of Earth's surface. "Begin Operation Neptune's Arrow," she ordered. From hidden submarine pins around the world, modified ballistic missile submarines began their ascent. But these weren't carrying nuclear weapons. The missiles had been retrofitted with something far more clever. In the Arctic Ocean, the USS Montana broke through the ice. Its missile tubes opened, revealing modified Trident missiles. Each warhead had been replaced with hundreds of small tungsten rods. Simple metal rods, nothing more. But when dropped from the edge of space, traveling at orbital velocity, they became kinetic weapons of devastating power. No energy signature. No chemical explosión. Just physics. The missiles launched in sequence, their trajectories carefully calculated. As they reached the edge of space, the warheads separated. Thousands of tungsten rods spread out, each one guided by tiny fins. They weren't aimed at the Kraxan ships. They were aimed at the space around them. On the Kraxan command ship, alarms suddenly screamed. Multiple launches detected. Zek reported. Chemical rockets from the planet's surface. Vorth felt relief. Finally, the humans were using technology he understood. Activate point defense systems. Destroy those primitive missiles. The Kraxan ships opened fire with plasma cannons. Brilliant beams of energy lashed out, striking the missiles. The weapons exploded in bright flashes. On the bridge, the crew began to relax. All missiles destroyed, the weapons officer reported. The humans are foolish to think chemical rockets could reach us. But then the sensor officer spoke up, confusion in his voice. "Commander, I'm detecting debris from the missiles. Thousands of small objects. They're just metal rods." Vorth's middle eye twitched. "Metal rods. Yes, Commander. Tungsten by the composition. They're spreading out in a cloud pattern. Trajectory suggests they'll pass near our formation, but they're just inert metal. No explosives. No energy signatures. Ignore them," Vorth ordered. "Focus sensors on the planet. They might be trying to distract us." This was the Kraxans' second fatal error. They were so dependent on their sensors, so confident in their technology, that they couldn't imagine danger from simple metal rods. In her bunker, General Chun watched the orbital tracks on her display. "Rods will reach target zone in T-3 minutes, the tracking officer reported. "Are the sniper teams ready for Phase 2? Chun asked. "All teams report ready, General. They've had time to relocate and resupply." Chun nodded. The beauty of human warfare was its adaptability. While the aliens sat in orbit, paralyzed by their first defeat, human forces have been constantly moving, preparing, adapting. In orbit, the tungsten rods approached the Kraxan formation. They weren't moving particularly fast by space standards. The alien shields, designed to stop high-energy weapons and fast-moving projectiles, didn't even register them as threats. The first rod struck a Kraxan destroyer. It punched through the hull like tissue paper. The kinetic energy transferred into the ship's structure, causing catastrophic damage. Atmosphere vented into space. Secondary explosions rippled through the vessel as power systems failed. More rods found targets. A cruiser lost its engine section. A frigate split in half. A carrier's launch bay collapsed, trapping hundreds of fighter craft inside. "What's happening?" Vorth roared as his fleet began to die around him. "Where are these attacks coming from?" "The debris field," Drax shouted over the alarms. "Those metal rods. They're kinetic weapons. Impossible. Our shields were designed for energy weapons and fast projectiles," Drax interrupted, forgetting protocol in his panic. "These rods are moving slowly enough to pass through the shield threshold, but they have tremendous mass. The impact energy is devastating." Vorth watched in horror as a third of his fleet was crippled or destroyed in minutes. Ships that could withstand plasma bombardment were being torn apart by simple metal rods. On Earth, Phase 2 began. The sniper teams, now repositioned, had new targets. The Kraxan ships in low orbit, damaged and venting atmosphere made perfect targets. Special rounds designed to penetrate spacecraft hulls found weak points exposed by the rod strikes. Sergeant Morrison, now positioned in the Canadian Rockies, aimed at a Kraxan frigate listing badly to one side. Through his scope, he could see the hull breach caused by a tungsten rod. Inside, emergency lights flickered. Target acquired, Park reported. Fuel storage tank exposed. Range 4,200 meters. Elevation angle 37 degrees. Morrison calculated in his head. Shooting into space required different mathematics than ground targets. Gravity would actually help at this angle. The thin atmosphere at altitude meant less drag. The bullet would need to be perfectly placed. He fired. The special incendiary round arced up into the sky, guided by physics older than human civilization. It found the exposed fuel tank and ignited the exotic matter inside. The frigate exploded in a brilliant purple fireball visible from the ground. Around the world, more sniper teams engaged damaged ships. Each shot was carefully calculated, targeting exposed systems, damaged shield generators, breached hull sections. The aliens discovered that human marksmanship extended beyond their atmosphere. In Tokyo, Sergeant Kenji Yamamoto had set up in the ruins of a skyscraper damaged during the first invasion attempt. His target was a Kraxan command vessel, trying to maintain position with half its engines offline. Communication array exposed, his spotter reported. If you can hit it, they lose fleet coordination. Yamamoto smiled grimly. The shot would have to travel through 12 kilometers of atmosphere at a steep angle. Wind patterns changed at different altitudes. The Earth's rotation would affect the bullet's path. A dozen variables that his mind processed automatically. The shot was perfect. The heavy round punched through the communication array, sending feedback through the ship's systems. Without fleet coordination, the Kraxan ships began to drift out of formation. On the command ship, Vorth faced a terrible decision. His fleet was being systematically destroyed by an enemy they couldn't see or counter. Every minute more ships fell silent. His sensor officers reported shots coming from everywhere and nowhere. Commander, Zek approached hesitantly. Perhaps we should consider retreat. Vorth finished. The word tasted like poison. The Kraxan Empire had never retreated, never surrendered, never failed. Strategic withdrawal, Zek corrected carefully. We could return with a fleet designed to counter these specific tactics. Vorth's three eyes closed in sequence, a sign of deep thought. His pride warred with his duty to preserve his forces. Outside, another ship exploded as human snipers found its weak point. Order the fleet to withdraw beyond lunar orbit, he commanded finally. We will reassess. But the humans weren't done. As the Kraxan fleet began to pull back, new contacts appeared on their sensors. From the dark side of Earth's moon, human ships emerged. Not many, just a dozen vessels. They looked primitive compared to Kraxan technology. Simple metal hulls, chemical rockets, ancient by galactic standards. But each ship bristled with modified weapons. Rail guns that fired streams of tungsten pellets. Missile tubes loaded with kinetic warheads. And, in the nose of each ship, something special. Captain Rachel O'Brien commanded the lead vessel, the hastily constructed ESS Defiance. All ships, this is Longbow Leader. Target the retreating vessels. Focus on engine sections. Let's give our sniper teams something to shoot at. The human ships opened fire, not with energy weapons or plasma cannons, but with simple kinetic projectiles accelerated to tremendous speed. The tungsten pellets spread out in clouds, impossible to dodge. They peppered the Kraxan ships, causing minimal damage individually, but forcing them to slow down and adjust course. This exposed them to the sniper teams on Earth. As the alien ships maneuvered to avoid the pellet clouds, they presented perfect profiles to the patient hunters below. More shots rang out. More ships suffered critical hits. This is impossible. Vorth raged. We have conquered 17 systems. We have technology beyond their comprehension. Commander, Drax spoke quietly. Perhaps that is the problem. We prepared to fight enemies like us. Advanced. sophisticated. The humans, they found strength in simplicity. In Australia, Corporal Jack Williams lay on a hill outside Sydney. His target was a Kraxan battleship trying to climb out of orbit. The ship's captain was being careful, zigzagging to avoid predictable movement. But Williams had been a hunter before he was a soldier. He knew how to read prey. He's going to jink left in 3 seconds, Williams told his spotter. Watch his engine pattern. Sure enough, the battleship began its turn to the left. Williams fired at where the ship would be, not where it was. The round struck the primary shield generator, already weakened by tungsten rod impacts. The generator exploded, leaving the battleship defenseless. The human ships pounced, firing concentrated volleys at the unshielded vessel. Within minutes, it was a drifting hulk. As the Kraxan fleet fled past the moon, Vorth took stock of his losses. Over 60% of his ships destroyed or crippled. Thousands of his finest warriors dead. His reputation in ruins. All because they had laughed at human weapons. Shall we report to the Empire? Zek asked quietly. Vorth considered. The Empire would demand answers. How could the mighty Kraxan fleet be defeated by a species that still used chemical propulsion? How could their advanced shields and sensors be useless against metal bullets? Not yet, Vorth decided. We will observe. We will learn. The humans have won this engagement, but they have also revealed their tactics. Next time, Commander. Next time we'll be ready for their snipers. They're patient hunters. They're simple weapons. But even as he spoke, Vorth wondered. The humans had defeated them with bullets and metal rods. What else had they kept hidden? What other simple solutions had they found to complex problems? On Earth, celebrations were muted. General Chun stood before the combined chiefs of staff from every nation. The alien threat had united humanity in a way nothing else could. Phase 2 is complete, she reported. The alien fleet is in retreat. Estimated enemy casualties exceed 10,000. Our losses 37 snipers who were discovered and eliminated by orbital bombardment before they could relocate. And Phase 3, the Russian general asked. Chun smiled coldly. Phase 3 begins now. They think they're safe beyond lunar orbit. They think they can observe and learn our tactics. She turned to Admiral Tanaka on the video screen. Admiral, are your assets in position? Hi, General. The deep space platforms are ready. Around the room, military leaders nodded. The aliens had made their third and perhaps fatal error. They assumed human weapons were limited to Earth's surface and orbit. They never considered that humans had been launching probes into deep space for over a century. Many of those probes have been recently modified. Floating in the darkness between Earth and Mars, powered down and invisible, they waited. Each one carried a simple payload. More tungsten rods. More patient hunters in the dark. Let them think they're safe, Chin said. Let them report back to their empire about the primitive humans and their metal bullets. When they return with a larger fleet, they'll learn that human innovation doesn't stop at our atmosphere. In space, Commander Vorth studied the blue planet that had humiliated his forces. His 3 eyes narrowed as he plotted revenge. The Kraxan would return. They would adapt. They would overcome these simple human tricks. But in the darkness around him, silent and patient, human weapons waited. The snipers of Earth had taught the galaxy a lesson. Technology wasn't everything. Sometimes the old ways were best. Sometimes a well-placed bullet could defeat the mightiest shield. The war was far from over. But the Kraxan had learned to fear human weapons. More importantly, they had learned to fear human patience. In a vast battlefield of space, the hunters were waiting. And they never missed. 6 months had passed since the Kraxan retreat. Earth's skies remained clear of alien ships, but no one believed the war was over. In hidden bunkers and secret facilities, human scientists and soldiers prepared for the inevitable return. Deep beneath Cheyenne Mountain, General Chun stood before a gathering of Earth's united military command. The room buzzed with tension. Intelligence reports suggested movement at the edge of the solar system. They're coming back, Chun announced, bringing up a holographic display. Long-range sensors detect a fleet 5 times larger than the first. The Kraxan Empire has taken us seriously. The display showed hundreds of red dots approaching from beyond Neptune. This wasn't a conquest fleet. This was an extermination force. Admiral Tanaka spoke from the screen. My deep space assets report the enemy fleet has adapted. They're using randomized movement patterns, constantly shifting positions. They've learned from our sniper tactics. What about their shields? Asked the British commander. Modified to detect slow-moving objects, Chin replied. Our tungsten rod strategy won't work twice. They're also maintaining higher orbits beyond effective sniper range. The room fell silent. Everyone understood the implications. The Kraxan had learned, adapted. The simple tricks that won the first engagement wouldn't save them now. Then, we show them what else humanity has learned in its long history of war, Chin said. Activate Operation Longbow Final. All teams to position. In the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, Sergeant Jake Morrison floated in the modified mining vessel. 6 months of training in zero gravity had changed him. His body had adapted to space. His mind had learned to calculate trajectories across millions of kilometers. Never thought I'd be a sniper in space. Park's voice crackled over the radio. She was in another vessel, 500 kilometers away. Too far to see, but close enough to coordinate. Distance is just a number, Morrison replied, checking his weapon. The rifle had been completely redesigned. In space, there was no air resistance. No gravity except what the distant sun provided. A bullet fired here would travel forever unless something stopped it. The weapon was essentially a small railgun, designed to fire projectiles at incredible velocity. Each round was equipped with tiny course correction thrusters, controlled by a guidance chip that could make micro-adjustments over vast distances. It was still a bullet, still kinetic, but adapted for the battlefield of space. Around them, hidden among the asteroids, 500 more sniper teams waited. The best marksmen from every nation, trained for a kind of warfare that had never existed before. Space snipers, patient hunters in the endless dark. On the Kraxan command ship, now designated Vengeance of the Empire, Commander Vorth studied his tactical display with satisfaction. His fleet was organized into rotating defensive spheres, each ship constantly changing position. No sniper could predict their movement. Their upgraded shields would detect any projectile, fast or slow. Commander, we're approaching the outer planets, Zek reported. The lieutenant had been promoted after surviving the first disaster. His suggestions about human tactics had proved valuable. Any sign of human defenses? Negative, Commander. Space appears empty. Vorth's 3 eyes narrowed. Empty space made him nervous now. The humans excelled at hiding, waiting, striking from nowhere. Deploy the sensor net, he ordered. Maximum coverage. If there's so much as a speck of dust out here, I want to know about it. Thousands of sensor probes launched from the fleet, spreading out in an expanding sphere. Each probe scanned continuously, searching for any sign of human presence. The net was designed to detect even the smallest object moving at any speed. In her asteroid hideout, Lieutenant Maria Gonzalez watched the sensor net deploy through her scope. The probes were tiny, no bigger than basketballs, but they glowed with energy signatures. They're being thorough, she muttered to her partner. Won't matter, Sergeant Davidson replied. Watch and learn. The human snipers didn't fire at the fleet. They fired at empty space. Each bullet was calculated with computer precision. The trajectory took into account the movement of planets, the gravity of the sun, the predicted path of the Kraxan fleet. These weren't shots measured in meters or even kilometers. These were shots measured in astronomical units. The bullets would take days to reach their targets. By then, the Kraxan fleet would have moved millions of kilometers. But space was predictable. Orbits followed laws. Mathematics ruled the void. Morrison fired his first shot. The projectile left his rifle silently, accelerating to speeds impossible in atmosphere. Its tiny thrusters would activate periodically, making minute adjustments. In 73 hours, it would arrive at a point in space where a Kraxan ship was mathematically certain to be. All around the asteroid belt, more snipers fired. Not at where the enemy was, but at where they would be. Thousands of bullets began their long journey through the dark. Phase 1 complete, Morrison reported. The bullets are flying. Days passed. The Kraxan fleet continued its approach, confident in their adaptations. They detected nothing. Their sensor net reported empty space. Their rotating formations continued their unpredictable dance. On Earth, populations were evacuated from major cities. If the snipers failed, the planet would face orbital bombardment. But Chin remained calm. She had learned to trust in human patience. General, an aide reported. We're receiving signals from the Mars observation posts. The enemy fleet has passed the red planet. And our surprise? Still undetected, ma'am. Chin smiled. The Kraxan had learned to fear snipers. They hadn't learned to fear human mining operations. For decades, human corporations had been mining asteroids, massive robotic facilities that process space rocks into useful materials. When the war began, these facilities were repurposed. Now they were weapons. As the Kraxan fleet passed Mars, signals went out. Throughout the asteroid belt, mining facilities activated. But instead of extracting, they began launching their stockpiles. Millions of tons of processed asteroid material, broken into chunks ranging from pebbles to boulders. The material was launched on carefully calculated trajectories, not fast enough to trigger shields, not aimed directly at the fleet, just clouds of debris that would arrive in the same area of space where the fleet would be in several days. Commander Vorth was reviewing supply reports when the first alarm sounded. Impact on Vessel 379. Zek reported. Minor damage to weight. Multiple impacts across the fleet. Vorth rushed to the tactical display. Red lights began appearing across his formation. Ships reporting impacts. Small at first, just dents and scratches. Then, larger pieces hitting. Shields flaring as they tried to cope with thousands of simultaneous impacts. Where is this coming from? Vorth demanded. Unknown, Commander. Sensors show nothing but natural asteroid debris, but the patterns, it's too concentrated to be natural. This was when the sniper bullets arrived. Each projectile had traveled for days across the void. Micro adjustments keeping them on target. Now, they struck with surgical precision. But these weren't aimed at vital systems. They were aimed at shield generators already stressed by asteroid impacts. A battleship's shield failed as 3 bullets struck in sequence. Immediately, larger asteroid chunks smashed into its hull. The cumulative damage was devastating. It's coordinated. Drax shouted over the alarms. The debris is weakening our shields, and then precision strikes are taking them down. More ships began to fail. Without shields, even small asteroid fragments became deadly at orbital velocities. The Kraxan fleet found itself flying through a carefully orchestrated storm of death. Evasive maneuvers. Vorth ordered. All ships scatter. But scattering was what the humans wanted. As ships broke formation, they became isolated. Easier targets for the next phase. From hidden bases on Mars moons, human ships launched. Not many, just 40 vessels. But each one was crewed by veterans of the first engagement. They knew exactly how to hunt scattered prey. Captain O'Brien commanded the lead squadron. All units, pattern Sigma. Pick your targets. Remember, we're not here to destroy them. We're here to herd them. The human ships darted in and out, firing calculated bursts. Not enough to destroy, just enough to force course changes. The Kraxan ships, already dealing with debris and sniper fire, found themselves being pushed into tighter groups. They're hurting us, Zek realized. Commander, we're being concentrated. Warsaw saw it too late. His scattered fleet was being pushed together by the human attacks. And in space, when ships got too close together, their options became limited. That's when a main sniper barrage arrived. Morrison and his teams had spent days calculating this moment. Thousands of projectiles, fired days ago, converged on the area where the Kraxan fleet was being herded. The bullets came from every angle, a 3-dimensional rain of death. Ships couldn't evade without hitting each other. Shields, already weakened by debris, failed in cascades. The pride of the Kraxan Empire found itself trapped in a killing field measured in cubic kilometers. This is impossible. Vorth raged as his command ship shuddered under impacts. They're hitting us with projectiles fired from beyond sensor range. How can they be so accurate? Mathematics, Drac replied quietly. Simple mathematics and patience. They calculated where we would be and made sure we had no choice but to be there. The slaughter continued for hours. Kraxan ships exploded, collided, or simply went dark as critical systems failed. The human ships darted around the edges, picking off escapees, maintaining the trap. On Earth, Chen watched the tactical display with grim satisfaction. Phase 3 complete. Enemy fleet combat effectiveness estimated at 15%. Should we demand their surrender? Someone asked. Chen shook her head. Not yet. They need to understand the lesson completely. In space, Vorth made a desperate decision. All remaining ships. Maximum burn toward Earth. If we're going to die, we'll take their planet with us. The surviving Kraxan vessels, perhaps 60 out of the original 500, accelerated toward Earth. Their weapons might be damaged, but even crashing into the planet would cause massive devastation. This was humanity's final test. As the alien ships approached, they passed through seemingly empty space. But hidden in the darkness, positioned months ago, were thousands of small satellites. Each one contained a simple weapon, a spring-loaded mechanism holding hundreds of metal balls. As the Kraxan ships passed, the satellites activated. Springs released, sending clouds of ball bearings spreading out at low velocity. To the weakened shields, they were nothing. To the damaged hulls, they were everything. The ball bearings punched through armor like rain through paper. Each one was small, but there were millions. The Kraxan ships found themselves flying through a metal storm that stripped away sensors, weapons, engines. By the time the survivors reached Earth orbit, they were barely functional. No weapons, no shields, no hope. Commander, Zek spoke softly. We have no options remaining. Vorth stood on his ruined bridge, looking at the blue planet below. His empire had never known defeat. His species had never faced an enemy who turned simplicity into such devastating effectiveness. Open a channel to Earth, he commanded finally. General Chun appeared on the screen. Behind her, representatives from every nation stood united. Humanity had found common purpose in survival. General Chun, Vorth spoke formally. I am Commander Vorth of the Kraxan Empire. I wish to discuss terms. Commander, Chen replied. Our terms are simple. Unconditional withdrawal from our solar system. A treaty guaranteeing Earth will never be attacked again. And a message to your empire. What message? Chen smiled coldly. That humanity's greatest weapon isn't our technology. It's our patience. We spent thousands of years learning to hit targets with thrown rocks. We just adapted that skill to a larger battlefield. Vorth's 3 eyes closed in defeat. Your terms are accepted. As the broken Kraxan fleet limped away from Earth, they carried with them a story that would spread across the galaxy. The humans, with their primitive weapons and patient hunters, had defeated the most advanced military in known space. Not through superior technology, not through overwhelming force, but through the simple art of putting a projectile exactly where it needed to be, exactly when it needed to be there. In the asteroid belt, Morrison and his fellow snipers powered down their weapons. The war was over, but they would remain on station, watching, waiting. Patient hunters in the dark. Think they'll ever come back? Park asked over the radio. Morrison smiled behind his helmet. Maybe, but now they know what we could do with bullets and time. Imagine what we could do if we actually tried to develop advanced weapons. Across the solar system, humanity returned to its normal life. But things had changed. The nations remained united. The snipers remained ready. And somewhere in deep space, probes continued to drift outward, carrying humanity's real message to the galaxy. We are the patient hunters. We are the ones who turned throwing stones into an art form. We are humanity, and we never miss. The Kraxan Empire added a new entry to their military database, a warning that would be shared with every spacefaring civilization. Earth, primitive technology, devastating tactics. Approach with extreme caution. Their warriors can hit targets across solar systems using nothing but mathematics and patience. Engagement not recommended. In her bunker, General Chun read the intercepted message and smiled. Let the galaxy know. Let them all know. Humanity had defended its home with bullets and patience. That was all they needed to know. The real secret, the one she would never share, was that humanity had much more than snipers in reserve. Technologies and strategies held back, waiting for a threat that required them. The Kraxan had faced only what was necessary to defeat them. Earth's true arsenal remained hidden, patient, ready. Just like its snipers, waiting in the dark for the next fool who thought human weapons were toys. The war was over. The vigil continued. And in the vast darkness of space, humanity had claimed its place not through conquest, but through the simple message that some species were too dangerous to attack, even with primitive weapons. Especially with primitive weapons. Because a species that could do so much with so little was a species that should never be pushed to do more.